Welcome to Mindful Minutes with Musicians, the show where we aspire to inspire musicians and artists talking about mindfulness and what brings us through our practice to achieve greater goals. Hey everyone, huge thank you to everyone for tuning in today to watch this episode of Mindful Minutes with Musicians, and make sure not to miss an episode. Please subscribe, click on the bell, and leave all your comments below. Today's guest is Emilio Portal, a mixed transdisciplinary artist, craftsman, designer, and musician. He's been playing music since the age of 13, has played all kinds of music like Latin, Andrean music, jazz, hip-hop, and improvisational music, if I could say that. And over the years, as well as electroacoustic and experimental sound art, which is awesome. And if you want to check it out, you can check it out at emilioportal.com. Over the years, they've also worked with a number of artists and curators throughout Canada and done a bunch of commissions as a designer, carpenter, and furniture maker. And currently they're fabrication lab technologists at McEwen School of Architecture at Laurentian University. And they're here with us today, all the way from Sudbury, Ontario, to talk with us about their about mindfulness and how, what that means to them. So huge welcome to Emilio Portal.
Thank you.
Hey.
That's great. Happy to be here.
Thanks, man. I guess we'll just start off like how are you? How have you been doing?
I think I'm doing pretty good. Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Working on music, new album, and finding lots of time to get into the woods. I like going for hikes with my son, and there's a lot of blueberries out these days. So
yeah. No, that's
fun.
the season for picking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess like I've seen like all your Instagram videos of sound art and stuff like that, like listening to water and branches, like on these walks that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What gave you the inspiration for these videos, and like, is it something that you felt inspired, or was it like a catalyst that you used to get inspiration, or
Yeah. Let me see. I think I've always been inspired by nature and the sounds of nature. I kind of grew up that way, and so some of my earliest memories are about being in nature. And I spent many hours like by myself playing near a creek and like hunting frogs and
totally.
all of that kind of thing. And so I was very fortunate to have that kind of a childhood. I'd go for walks with my grandfather in the woods, and he'd show me all these different plants. And I also remember like the smell of the forest. It's like especially in the middle of the summer when it's hot, it's like seems like it's like a tea almost.
And there's so much there, right? There's like so many layers of nature, and it's
Mm-hmm.
What are the kind of things that have spurred your creativity, and is there anything that you've been doing to like get yourself into these types of creative states, or do you just kind of like go out there and be inspired?
Yeah, I think I'm the way I see the world is kind of about art and about expression and creativity. So I think it's always there, even when I'm cooking or doing the dishes,
Right.
Just like basic stuff, like everyday actions. I think creativity and art and expression is always there, because it's never the same, right? Like you can do the dishes every day, but you're not going to do them the same. None of those dishes will be in the same order. It's like, so there's a kind of fluidity to everything.
Yeah. it like keeps spontaneity in life, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, it makes me think about like there's a lot of discussion in the like drummers world, where they're like, are you a drummer with like a huge drum set, or have you like kind of honed it down to a few pieces and kind of working on limiting your I guess sounds, but that means you have to work on your creativity and your spontaneity to bring out different, like more musicality or more freedom in the way you play,
Right,
so
yeah.
there's something about the limitation which I think can really help creativity, because
Yeah,
if you have like a million different sounds to choose from, sometimes you have no clear focus or direction for what you're
yeah,
trying to do.
yeah. Or you end up just doing the things that are familiar, and you kind of, only stick to those certain things, even though there may be
Hmm.
all these choices, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's crazy because like especially in electronic music, like there's like a million different plugins out there,
Yeah,
million different synths and sounds that all these different producers are putting out there. But
yeah.
you can get totally drowned by that and you forget about
Hmm.
creativity and just get totally like infatuated by the sound.
Yeah,
But
get
if you
caught
just
up
pick,
in, yeah.
yeah, if you just pick a handful or like a dozen and just go from there, I
Hmm.
think I think that's when you can really develop like your own sound and develop like a kind of a path for yourself. And
Yeah,
nobody's going to tell you how to do that. You just have to like, that becomes
yeah.
a very subjective, emotional kind of
Hmm.
taste thing. It's like
Yeah.
some people like pickles, some people don't, you know, it's
it's
like
it's
that.
it's allowing yourself to be like selectively, decisive about what you want the outcome to be, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just try it. I think that's like a kind of recommendation is just try it for a while. And you can always
Hmm.
change it up, but try it
Hmm.
for a while. I mean, like try try making music for like 6 months like that or a year.
Yeah.
Just work on that palette. And if you don't like it, change it.
Switch it.
But
Yeah.
the chances are it's like I think you can always get something out of those sounds. Uh,
Hmm.
Another kind of analogy is about rhythm.
Hmm.
I think that I think all rhythms are special. There's not one rhythm that's more special than another. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and there's you if you play that rhythm more and more and you dedicate yourself to it, then you can get to that kind of special place where you have that real amazing feeling when you play music. So the
Hmm.
deeper you go into that same rhythm, the more you can kind of bring that out.
Hmm.
And so yeah, there's not a rhythm that's more special than another. It's all like it's about the intention you bring towards it.
And it's how each individual portion of the outcome or whatever that you want, like each portion, what they bring to it, and like, you know what I mean, that kind of thing, as far as the beat is going to bring something different depending on what else is supporting that, you know what I mean, as far as
Hmm.
um what it's all going to kind of um output, you know.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think a lot about like I think about like kind of you could call it like ceremonial or devotional kind of music, but I'm really
Mhm.
interested in like percussive music like that. Like a lot of West
Yeah.
African music is like that. Music from Colombia and Brazil. There's
Hmm.
a lot of music like that that is super rhythm focused,
Yeah.
but the rhythm they play that for a long time and it brings people to like these kind of amazing like states of being. And so
Oh man, yeah.
it's like that kind of that kind of I don't even know what to call it. It's like a like almost transcendental or something. Like that kind of rhythm can bring you there, but it can only do that if the drummers are totally dedicated and devoted to that specific rhythm. You know,
Yeah, if
so there's
each
some.
part, yeah, it keeps its, yeah.
So there's something about like that, the repetition that eventually gets into like it's like cooking a stew for a really long time. You know, it's that kind of thing. You can't have a really good stew if you only cook it for 10 minutes. It's not going to happen. You know, it's got to be 2, 3, 4, maybe longer hours, you know?
Yeah.
And then all the flavors really start to develop and something magic happens in all of that, you know?
Yeah, no, time is definitely super important as far as these type of things, like even timing, yeah.
And it's funny because it's rare nowadays in like our, you know, pop culture music kind of sphere. There's no songs that are over 3 minutes nowadays. It's very rare.
Yeah, no, that's
you know
true.
I'm talking about like the songs that get heard on a daily basis or played on a daily basis on any radio station, you know.
Yeah.
Most or like all the millions of different playlists that are produced out there on Spotify or whatever.
Yeah.
Most of those tracks are like 3 minutes or less.
Yeah, and I find a lot of artists do that like purposefully, like keep that timing of tracks just because the radio is that's what they're gonna output, like
Yeah.
but
my longest track is like 31 minutes long. And it's it's a lot of improvisation in there, and the way I work is that I don't really know where I'm going. You know, there's sometimes some pieces are more have a more strict kind of compositional feel to them, but others are totally like just flowing. You know, and maybe there's some kind of bass rhythms or progression of some sort, you know. But yeah, I'm interested in the kind of longer journey, you know.
Totally. We were talking earlier about taking field sounds, and you go on these walks, and that's where you collect these field samples kind of thing, and utilize that in your music kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, the project I'm working on now, it's a new album that I got support from the Ontario Arts Council for, and that's really awesome. But the field recording is it's kind of I think a lot about how we've lost our connection to nature, you know, in our modern world. And so how do we kind of regain that? And I think a big part of that is having to do with like actually touching or being in nature. You know, so the field recording is about me actually touching lichen. And I put like the recorder as close as I could to capture the sound of my hand touching the lichen.
Feeling,
yeah. So it's like it's a very abstract and kind of percussive sound, but there's highs and lows and all of that, and it's very like it's a kind of very intimate sound, and it's not a very long recording, but the way I work with that is I go in and I listen to all the different regions of that small field recording and start to use them as instruments and turn them sometimes into loops and things like that. And then I can use them as a kind of chromatic instrument. And it's a wild thing because you never know how it's going to go. Then you start to EQ it a little bit, and then you bring out different flavors of the whole thing, and it's like incredible.
That's super cool.
Put some reverb on it, like it's crazy, you know, what can come out of something. And I'm talking not a lot. You know, you can play around with the reverb and put the decay time can be very short, or you can go crazy with it, you know.
I
And
guess
so
that the options are endless at that point, like.
yeah, and that's just two things. Like equalization is like kind of foundational to almost everything, and
Mm-hmm.
in the electronic world, especially when it comes to mixing and mastering. But like even sound design, it's like equalization to me is like, that's like number one, because you start to really, you don't even have to see the analysis of the frequency, just listen to it and you can start to pick up all these different regions of what's happening there. And there's like, it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing that that kind of field recording of touching lichen produces that many, the broad range of sounds, like
So, yeah,
crazy.
that's awesome. Yeah, no, that's and yeah, just to like be able or like be close enough, and you know what I mean, as far as like to hear the touch. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of a nice experience just
Yeah,
alone.
like if you were to touch the lichen and hold your arm out like this and actually touch it, and you were not paying attention, you probably wouldn't hear it.
Yeah,
But if you get up close and touch it, then you
yeah,
start to hear it. So that's how like low volume this thing is,
yeah.
I've had to pump it up multiple times, like I'm talking over 36 decibels, in order to get something heard.
Just
But that
from that,
causes,
like,
yeah. So it's crazy because
that's
it's
cool.
like then there's all kinds of like noise, well, whatever we call noise, but all the like the
The
from
surrounding.
from from increasing the volume of it. It's like so
That's
interesting.
wild.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. Yeah, this is yeah. I was just gonna say, like, from the beginning of the pandemic and the to now, do you think like that like how is the like time and the space as far as like not being able to do a lot of the things that we were doing, um do you think that has like affected your work at all, or do you think that like it's kind of helped produce more sounds or more creativity out of that?
I think it's not really changed my trajectory very much.
Yeah.
I mean, because in some way it's given me more time to focus and like go really like inside the work, and inside the sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a long time that I've thought that, like I'm talking over 20 years since I was like teenager, that I thought that, like we're in a big ecological problem.
Mm.
And so how do I, bring about that kind of concept or idea or perspective in music. I think that's my big challenge in some way, because most of my music's instrumental. First of all,
Yeah.
but about bringing this kind of like small minuscule world, or like I'm really interested in microscopic, like small stuff, close-up stuff, like the macro photography and stuff like that, to see
Mm-hmm.
like the details of the world,
Yeah,
because
totally.
I think by looking at the kind of natural details that are already there, we kind of start to come to a place where we value things more. It's like, hold on, we can't just like cut this forest down. We don't even know, we can't even look at a leaf properly. We want to cut the forest down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think about that in musical terms. It's like, what about all the minuscule like hidden sounds that we don't hear?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a kind of almost a conservation aspect to the work,
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to,
It's
yeah,
seeing it more like it from what I hear, it's like seeing it from more like the layers of the entire system, instead of like just looking at as a system kind of thing. You know what I
mm-hmm,
mean? It's like actually looking at like it's not just like a forest. There are so many different like so many different things that are involved in that. You know what I mean? Like
totally.
as even
Yeah,
as
like
far
I,
as
it's
yeah.
it's absolutely like that, like Yeah, I could get into this for a long time, but I'm reading this amazing book called Technic and Magic. It's
Okay.
by a Italian philosopher. His name is Federico Campagna. It's an incredible book, and he's touching in on a lot of what you just said about the
Yeah.
different perspective between like seeing everything as kind of this resource or this dead matter that we can just extract,
Yeah.
to what about the like the individual existence of things and their experience and their lives. It's almost like that in our contemporary time, in what he calls the time of like it's like a technical time, techne, which is like it's seeing everything as kind of dead matter and something that you can like extract to produce something else. So in that way, it's like the system becomes more important than the individual aspects of entities.
Mm-hmm.
So like what I'm talking about is like the leaf. And what about
Yeah.
the every leaf being individual, every leaf having something like special and offering something back to the tree, to the overall organism. It's like this incredible like life and symbiosis going on. And
Yeah.
that's only one tree, one
Yeah.
leaf. Uh,
No, it's true. It's true.
so yeah, it's, I think, moving away from this kind of I don't know, homogenizing of everything into a place where we start to see more diversity. Like I think
Mhm.
that's critical, because if we
Yeah.
don't see diversity, everything loses its value. You know
Oh
what I
yeah.
mean?
Oh yeah. I remember speaking with my partner about this, about like well, they were saying, like, things like nature, all that kind of stuff. It's like that it things would not survive if they weren't diverse. Like
Yeah,
the forest needs itself to be diverse, and if it was all homogenous, then it just wouldn't survive. It would, it would
yeah,
eat itself out, and that's the end of it, kind of thing. So it's like necessary to survival is this or this eco culture,
yeah.
in
And I,
general.
I think that kind of that that homogeneous kind of it's like a trend, you could say. I think it's everywhere. Okay,
Yeah.
it's in art, it's in music, it's in every industry that you can possibly imagine that is
Yeah.
going on right now. And it's also like you could say linguistically or culturally, there's a lot of issues with all of it, because
Mhm.
there's like this overarching one culture, a global culture that's like trying to take over everything. And there's a lot of like indigenous cultures, for example, and languages that are like endangered of their existence. There's only a few
Mhm.
people that still speak
That's
those
still.
languages fluently and things like that.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
goes this that's also in music, that's also in art. I think it's this pervading force that's trying, it's almost like trying to erase kind of an alternative narrative to existence,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
because there's so
yeah,
many different narratives, like, and there's so many different um like, perspectives, and experiences,
yeah. So, like I think about that in music,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a big part of it has to do with kind of embracing vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're trying to control everything, which is I believe a kind of signature of that homogeneous kind of tendency, is to want to control everything that makes us feel any kind of fear or uncomfortable kind of emotion. Then
Mm-hmm.
let's just try to squash it and control it, and you
Mm-hmm.
know suppress it.
Yeah.
But I really don't think that that's healthy for us at all, or for anyone. And we
Yeah.
can see, or for any kind of you know natural system, for a lack of better better term, for system. I mean, system is an interesting term, but you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to be healthy for all the entities because it's trying to manipulate and control outcomes when in fact we kind of evolved in a super vulnerable place, in a wild place. And so
Yeah.
I'm more interested in going towards the wildness in music.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about rewilding music. So there's a lot of there's a lot of talk about rewilding ecosystems and rewilding different places.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of times, how do you do that? Is the only way to do that is to kind of leave that place alone and remove human intervention from it. And then it's like it kind of takes off and it becomes a super diverse and rich place again.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think nature also like allows us the not or the gives us the knowledge that like it's that this is like it's malleable, you know what I mean, like a system is malleable within the environment because everything is ever always changing and it's always updating, or you know what I mean, that kind of thing, like it's yeah, there's like that kind of that re-life or that reliving of things within nature that I don't think you really get outside of that, like like on a daily when you're
Yeah.
when you're in a downtown region, it's a total different story kind of thing.
Yeah, it reminds me, I can't remember the name of this artist, but I think it was in California somewhere, where it's in a city and there's a kind of chain link fence, like square lot property, like it's empty, and it's kind of like old buildings were totally like demolished there, whatever. There was nothing. It's just a cleared out lot. And I think their project was to just let it fallow and let the wild plants come back. And now there's like this massive, like kind of small forest inside of this lot.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like they didn't do anything. They didn't plant anything. It's just like the wild flowers and herbs came around, and eventually some trees. Like just the birds will bring all those seeds, and the wind.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's amazing.
That's cool. That's cool. Like a little
So
oasis in the city kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah. No,
So it's like, how do you tap into that kind of aspect of like being spontaneous with music, and like kind of trying not to judge and discriminate against your own self, because your own inner critic is so strong,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
and it smashes millions of ideas, I think, or billions. If you think about all the people on the earth and our inner critic, that energy of like crushing ourselves, that's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you think about even just think about the ideas that you've thought over time and didn't record, or didn't and hold on to, and they've passed, you know what I mean, and you're like, oh, I remember there was a good idea, but that's that's gone now.
And if you've recorded it, you can go back and then maybe 5 years later you listen to it and you're like, why didn't I do anything with this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
So I try to record everything, even if it's like it sidetracks my entire like process or whatever. I'll record it and save it as a different project or something. So it's, and it'll get lost. Like I'm talking, there's hundreds of projects that I got going on that are just like, some of them become kind of archive. But I think if you go back and you just listen to it, you're like, wow, there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. This is very valuable. So I'm glad I didn't delete it, or
or that you actually did record. Yeah. This kind of leads to the next kind of question is like, what are the kind of things that you do to be like more productive or in a more positive mind space in order to spark creativity? Like as far as like you know, yeah, what's your process kind of thing?
Hmm. I think in some way, there's a lot of people who say, oh, create like a bin of favorites and stuff like that so you can be more productive or whatever. But I
Mm-hmm.
like to kind of start almost like fresh. I have I have a series of like return tracks with some effects on them,
Mm-hmm.
which are usually pretty standard. I have some reverb and like a delay and some like overdrive. That's about
Mm-hmm.
it. And
Yeah.
then in like on the master bus, I have like usually like equalizer, compressor, and that's about it. And I just try to like I don't like to crush sound. I'll reduce the volume, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
mix.
Yeah.
There's like so um yeah, I'm not trying to push red or anything like that, but it's just all loose kind of ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like then I just leave that alone. Maybe I'll put a cap at like -1 or even -3 dB
Yeah.
for like a cap limiter, but the volume never hits that.
Mm-hmm.
So that I'm not crushing the dynamics or anything. So at
Yeah.
that point, I don't want to just clip or anything, but it never gets there because I'm playing with quite lower volumes on the individual tracks. And then I like a lot to play around with, like with
Yeah.
keys. Like I have there's a really nice plugin which was developed over 10 years by this company called Spectrasonics.
Okay.
And they have everything from grand piano to like plucked keyboards and stuff. It's like insane, the stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't cheap, but it's an incredible instrument that I can find a lot of inspiration in that because it's like so many different sounds. And so sometimes I'll play around and start there, but sometimes I won't start in a kind of chromatic way at all. It'll be way more abstract. And that's where I
Mm-hmm.
start with field recordings.
Mm-hmm.
And that is usually like working with a sampling instrument in Ableton and just investigating the sample and moving from there. Sometimes it turns into a very rhythmic focused thing, or
Yeah.
I don't know, but I kind of try to get into a zone where I'm just listening to the sound and not
Right.
not not focusing in on anything else, and just like dedicating myself fully to what the sound is, and
Mm-hmm.
exploring it that way and listening and trying to go deeper with it. And sometimes I'm just like listening to something on loop for a long time, like 10-15 minutes, and
Yeah.
it just kind of sinks in, and it's not going anywhere, but it's
Yeah.
like it's starting to like inform some process that's
Yeah.
even like subconscious. You don't really know.
What gave you the idea to kind of start these recordings and stuff like that and involve them in your music and stuff?
I think, I don't know, that's hard to say. I like the uniqueness of it. I like how it's I like that there's a like a dirtiness to the sound. and
Mm-hmm.
and I like that the recording is not like, it's not like 100%. It's not without noise. It's not
There
like
are
I'm
crackle and yeah, that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
sometimes I'm just using my phone to make these things,
Mm-hmm.
even though those phones are very hi-fi nowadays.
Yeah.
But I could use anything. I could use a tape and just input that into my interface. It could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something really, really interesting about like it's like a found object. I think it relates to like a lot of what I was doing in my visual art practice. And having to do with like finding objects that I found interesting and that I was like drawn to, and I would collect them. You should see my studio at University of Victoria was insane. It was like a kind of museum of junk. or what I call discarded stuff, discarded objects. And so I would try to like honor these objects in different ways by either writing poems or like printing the texture of them onto paper, or doing some kind of like array or installation of them in a larger space, and bringing attention to them in a different way. So it's like it could be a series of like, it could be plastic bags, it could be it's something so mundane as that, or like paper clips, or those plastic clips for bread bags. It could be all kinds of things, anything. And it's about like bringing it to people's attention in a different kind of way, so they start to understand and see like these discarded things as not really, you could say they're not benign. There's consequences to all of that. And so we should kind of try to recall that and actually honor it and take responsibility for those things. So maybe that's
how much they build up, you know what I mean? Like there's just produced so much that the amount that that gets waste compared to the production kind of thing.
And in some way there's a contrast, because in musical terms I'm not really interested in sampling industrial sounds. Like I just find we're so inundated with that we know it's there. We hear traffic all the time. We hear our noise pollution on a daily basis. We don't need more of that. What I feel like what we've forgotten, or what I've forgotten, is like, and what I want to remember, because probably I had that in my childhood and I want to share that with people, is that like there's maybe more, I don't want to use the word important, but different sounds that we should be focusing on, especially like natural ecological sounds, and so, or the sound of like something that's more kind of I don't know, mysterious. I think there's a lot of like mystery and magic and that sort of element of and poetics is totally lost, in our reality.
I think it's super important to take that time just to allow yourself to like listen and to like nature, and just listen to the air and the breeze and the birds and all the different layers,
like, so that's like a kind of like a little ingredient, that it's not more than a little, it's like a main ingredient in the music that I'm trying to put together. And so there's a lot of mix. Sometimes it's like, I'm using like instruments like pianos or like, I love sound of Rhodes and Wurlitzers and those kind of electric keys. But there's like the mixing of those things seems to be like, I don't know, really interesting to me, because it's like bringing in those kind of forgotten sounds into the mix,
Totally. No, it's important. It's important. I guess the last kind of question I'm going to ask, and it's big one, is like what is mindfulness to you? Like how would you kind of express, or how do you feel through, or
That's an interesting question. I mean, makes me think of like when I lived in this is a long story, but I lived in Halifax before, and I lived right around the corner from like the Shambhala headquarters. So I would go there quite often and have this whole experience with that, and I did a lot of reading and practice around meditation. But there's, from my understanding, there was a lot of talk of the difference between awareness and mindfulness. And so there's like, it's kind of almost a gray zone in some way. And I think mindfulness is kind of more about like your interior kind of feeling of what's going on, your own mind chatter. And that's kind of about the mindfulness of seeing what's going on inside of you. And the awareness part is more about being aware of what's outside of you. I mean, but awareness can be also you're aware of your own thoughts too. I mean, so there's that's the gray zone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but awareness is kind of in some way has that kind of connotation of being more like outside, more all pervading kind of feeling of like having a sense.
I think you froze.
Influencing your day to day. Oh,
Sorry.
we're getting a little choppy there, eh?
Yeah, I think you froze for like half a second.
So yeah, I mean, mindfulness, I think I would say that it's kind of more about watching your own thoughts, your own emotions, you know, your own problems.
Yeah.
All of that, all of your internal mess, or what some people call the compost.
Yeah.
It's all that can be composted, right?
Yeah.
And kind of transformed into something more beneficial. But I think just looking at yourself and looking at your internal thoughts and emotions, that's the process of composting itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because all of a sudden,
allowing yourself that time to work that stuff.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. And I think there's a lot of fear about doing that, you know, about looking inside. And there's a lot of distraction to try to not look inside and to kind of you know, be occupied with other things.
Yeah.
That would take us away from our dark, you know, thoughts or dark emotions or our history or trauma. It's all part of the mix, you know.
Yeah, and there's so many distractions, right? Like and you know, it just depends on if we allow that to kind of be those distractions, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think it's not easy to go into that place of being more to listen to your own feelings and to watch your own thoughts.
Yeah.
But I think it's very beneficial, and it's a never-ending kind of practice. And it's like you know, everybody, it's a lifelong thing that we're all going to be working on, you know. And whether you want to work on and whether you want to work on it or not is in some way irrelevant, because you can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
Those thoughts, all your emotions, everything, you're going to be carrying that. You can't get rid of that. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
So you may as well make a kind of friendship with it, or at least some kind of relationship that you can start to try to digest.
Yeah. No, it's well put. That's well put. I think that's a sweet place to conclude. I'm just gonna play the outro, but I really, really appreciate you joining me today and kind of sharing your process and your, you know, all that. So
Thanks for having me.
thank you for tuning in to Mindful Minutes with Musicians. For more information about my guest and the topics of the show, go to blackmoremedia.ca and connect with us on all social media platforms. Welcome to the MMWM family, where we aspire to inspire. See you soon. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Emilio, for joining me. Yeah, it's been a blast, and I really appreciate it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, David.
No worries.